Welcome back, magic lovers. This is Tracy Partridge-Johnson welcoming you back for another episode from The Golden Telescope, Book 1 in my Jack and the Magic Hat Maker middle grade fantasy fiction series. Today I will be reading to you from Chapter 13, Waterfront Convo. Before I do that, please do take a moment to subscribe to my channel and ding that little bell so that you receive notification every time I upload new content, which I do Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. And also, if you'll take a moment to give me a thumbs up if you like this episode, that would be great, as it helps me gain more exposure so that other people can find my readings. So that said, I will move right along to reading the chapter to you. Chapter 13, Waterfront Convo, Portland, Oregon, present day. Jack looked behind him to watch as the Max started moving again, heading toward its next stop. Glancing across the tracks, he noticed there were several people sitting on trashy-looking sleeping bags spread out on the ground here and there under the overpass. It smelled like garbage and urine, which made his stomach churn. Seeing homeless people on the streets downtown always made him feel uncomfortable, but grateful that he at least had a roof over his head. He tried to put them out of his mind as he turned instead to the right and started walking towards Skidmore Fountain, where he could sit and wait for his friend to arrive. Only one other train came and went before he saw Bart's familiar face poking out from between train doors and peering in his direction. He stepped off the platform and bounded toward Jack, ever-present earbuds swinging and bobbing lazily from both sides of his head as he moved. "Have you been here long?" he asked, coming to a stop in front of the brick wall where Jack was sitting. "Nah, maybe 5 minutes. You're good," Jack said, standing. The two of them instinctively headed toward the river. "So what's all this weird bad news?" Bart asked, glancing at Jack as they walked. "Dude," Jack started, shaking his head. "You are seriously not, and I mean not, going to believe this," he said, coming to a stop. "Let me have it, man. Did they already take you to see a doc, or what?" Bart pressed the pedestrian crossing button impatiently multiple times in an attempt to coerce the red light into changing faster. "Was it a seizure?" Bart prompted. The light turned green and they sprinted across the street. An audible beep, beep, beep was counting down the number of seconds they had to reach the other side. Heading toward the concrete steps in front of the water park, Jack finally looked at Bart and made a motion for him to sit down. Bart obliged, perching himself on the top step. "I can't even believe I'm going to say these words to you, Bart. This is so freaking ridiculous." Jack closed his eyes and shook his head back and forth in exasperation. "What?" Bart asked, his tone slightly strained. Jack opened his eyes and looked at his friend, whose eyes were wide with worry. "You're not dying or something, are you?" As Jack paused to consider his words, the solemn look on Bart's face changed from mild curiosity to one of desperation and fear. He opened his mouth. "Oh, Jack, no!" "No, no," Jack interrupted, seeing the panic brewing on his friend's face. "No, I'm not dying. Sorry, I didn't mean to scare you, dude." He turned his head to the left, gazing past the grass and trees to look at all the other people milling about. "But I almost think that would be better than what I'm dealing with here." "Come on, man, you're freaking me out." Bart had a new, less concerned, but curious expression on his face as he sat forward, staring at Jack in anticipation. "Well, there's no other way to get this out than to just say it. Brace yourself, because you are going to bust a gut over this one." Jack grimaced, already anticipating the effect of the words that were about to come out of his mouth. "Okay, so my uncle said that—" He rolled his eyes and threw his hands up in the air in a frustrated sort of way. "That I'm not having seizures." "Well, that's a good thing, right?" Bart interjected, his posture visibly relaxing at the news. "Oh, wait. Just you wait, Bart. That's not the whole story." Jack looked down at his feet. "Yeah, it's a good thing that I'm not having seizures. Though, no, they did not take me to the doctor today." Jack knew he was just stalling as he watched his friend process the information he was slowly revealing. "Wait a minute." Bart readjusted his position on the steps so that he faced Jack from the side. "Then how do they know you aren't having seizures?" "Exactly!" Jack shouted a little too loudly, catching himself and glancing around self-consciously before continuing. Then in a softer voice, "They couldn't possibly know for sure, right? Without taking me to see a professional." He turned to face Bart. "But there's this other thing. And it's kind of—" Bart exhaled loudly. "Just freaking spit it out, will you? What's going on, Jack?" Jack's head dropped into his hands and he groaned. He wove his fingers through his hair and pulled in frustration before letting go and looking up. "Okay. Sheesh." He leaned closer to Bart, lowering his voice to barely a whisper. "Come here." He motioned toward his face. Bart moved in, glancing around as he did. "My uncle says that I have," Jack breathed, "magical powers." There was a split second of silence before Jack exploded in laughter. He was loud, and he grabbed his belly with both arms as he bent over at the waist, almost hitting his knees with his nose. Bart sat perfectly still, staring at his friend, stunned. "That was not funny," Bart said, no hint of a smile anywhere on his face. I know. I'm sorry, really I am," Jack gasped, trying to bring his laughter under control. "But I'm not kidding with you. They were completely serious. That's what makes it all so freaking hilarious." Jack finally calmed himself and ran his right hand through his hair. "What?" Bart blinked hard 2 or 3 times, scrunching up his face and shaking his head back and forth like he was trying to get water out of his ears. "I mean, what?" He sat back, both hands supporting his weight on the sidewalk behind him. "They were serious as a heart attack. I kid you not." Jack also turned, resting on his backside. "You didn't tell them about the telescope and what you saw, did you?" Bart interrupted. No way. Because, get this, while my uncle is talking to me, I noticed that big ring he wears on his right hand. You know, the one with the red stone in it?" Bart nodded. It was quite an impressive ring, so Jack expected his friend had noticed it. "Yeah, well, all of a sudden, that thing's all lit up like a fire engine or something. And then it hits me that that ring is identical, except for the color of the rock, to the one I saw in that vision." "What? That's crazy." Jack waved his hand. "So it's not just me, right? That's more than a little bit coincidental, don't you think?" he asked, and waited for Bart's reply. "Yeah, no, that is definitely not just you. More than coincidental, for sure. Bizarre, I'd say." And Jack continued, "Thank you. That's what I thought." So I told them everything but left that part out. Uncle Earl seemed really interested in the entire experience, wanted to know where I was, what I was doing, who was with me. He specifically asked if there was anything strange or if I touched anything unusual. He looked at Bart again and continued, "So when I told him you and I thought maybe I had a seizure and that I should go see a doctor, that's when he told me to relax and that I don't have a medical condition." Jack threw his right hand in the air and rolled his eyes again. "So of course, I asked him how he could know that without taking me to a professional, and that's when he tells me." Jack looked down to his feet again and exhaled loudly. "Tells you?" Bart urged him to go on. "Tells me," and he spoke his next words in a sing-song sort of voice, under his breath, and much more rapidly than before, "that I come from a long line of magic workers who don't come into their powers until they hit puberty, and that's why I haven't had this kind of experience before now." The two friends sat motionless for a couple of minutes before Bart finally spoke. "That's flat out the stupidest thing I've ever heard. They're insane. Verifiably, clinically insane." "I know. My thoughts exactly." Jack rolled his eyes. "Okay, so let's just play along for a minute and pretend like what he was saying is true. What does any of this have to do with that golden telescope my dad found last night?" Jack stared up at the sky above them. The gray clouds were parting in the distance, revealing a blue sky beyond. He inhaled deeply, filling his lungs and his head with a fresh perspective. "Well, that's what I'm hoping you can help me figure out. I'm not sure what to do from here. How can I know if what Uncle Earl is saying is true? I mean, if, and this is an uber huge if, I do possess some magical abilities," he briefly scoffed before continuing, "then it seems like I should be able to control those abilities somehow, right?" He looked pleadingly at Bart. "Yeah, that does seem logical. If any of this could be considered even remotely logical, that is." Bart pulled the ball cap off his head and pushed the bangs back out of his eyes before replacing it. "So it seems like you need to test the idea somehow, to see if there's anything to what they are telling you," he finished. "I've been giving that some thought too," Jack replied. "And I've concluded that the only way to know for sure is if I try touching that stupid telescope again. As much as the idea terrifies me, it seems the only way to find out. If it was just a coincidence, then touching that thing shouldn't affect me any more than it affects you." "And if it wasn't?" Bart looked genuinely worried. "What if you do have that same kind of attack again? What if it's worse than before and you end up in the emergency room? We don't know how to predict the outcome." He scratched his chin, squinting as he thought. "Well, actually, we kind of do. It seems to me like the only way I would have that same kind of experience again would be if what they are saying is true. And if it is, then that would indicate there must be some validity to what they're claiming. If not, then touching that thing shouldn't affect me any more than it affects you, right?" "You do have a good point there. I mean, I guess the telescope shouldn't pose any physical threat if you don't have any magical abilities." Oh my gosh. I can't even believe we are taking this seriously. But if you do have some weird power, then We still really have no clue what to expect when you touch that thing. He was chewing on his bottom lip as he thought. It would be good if we could figure out some kind of safeguard. You know, insurance to protect you. But I don't know how we would do that. And he looked at Jack. Jack sat silent for a moment, considering. One thing we know is that my physical body didn't go anywhere when I had the vision. I stayed right where I was the entire time, right? His mouth dropped open. Hey, you were with me. We haven't talked at all about your version of what happened. Bart's eyes brightened. Right. So we were standing in my dad's office, and I was holding the telescope, telling you about it. Then, when I went to hand it to you... Jack nodded. Yeah, I remember that part. Bart continued. Then you touched it, and... He frowned. You kept standing there like you were before, but your eyes glazed over, like a lights are on but nobody's home kind of thing. Your eyes rolled back in your head. You didn't respond at all to anything I said or did. I was shaking you and yelling at you. Bart shrugged, meeting Jack's eyes again. That part only lasted maybe 30 seconds or a minute tops. But then all of a sudden, you just dropped the telescope like a hot potato and collapsed on the floor. Next thing I knew, you're awake, for lack of a better word, and back to your old self again. Jack's eyes narrowed. Did you try to remove the telescope from my hands at all? And he looked at Bart. No, I don't think I did. It all happened so fast, and you were gripping it so tightly with both hands that I'm not sure I could have got it from you anyway. Okay, so what if we tried it again, but this time you forcefully remove the thing from my hands after, 30 seconds, Jack finished, and waited to see what Bart thought of the idea. I gotta tell you, Jack, this idea freaks me out. Yeah, the thought of repeating that experience trips me out too. But I do believe it's the only way to know for sure what's real and what's not. Bart took his hat off and started to twist it around in his hands. This experiment seems really risky, Jack. I don't like it one bit. What if you go into a trance again but don't come back? I'm willing to bet that my not coming back isn't very likely, since I came back the first time, Jack said, smirking at his friend. And if the incident is repeatable at all, I should also be able to return by releasing my hold on the item that transported me, just like it did before. Okay, we can do this, Bart said, reassuring himself. Then he scoffed, looking back at Jack. So now I guess the only question is when. No time like the present, Jack said, standing and looking at Bart expectantly. Seriously? You want to go now? He looked down at his wrist to check the time and grimaced. The store is going to be really busy at this time of day. Let's wait a couple of hours until Pop closes up. Jack grinned. Sounds like a plan. And I think that's it for today. On Wednesday, I will read to you Chapter 14, Followed, which also takes place in Portland, Oregon, present day. So I hope you've enjoyed this reading today. Just for your information, there are 37 chapters in the book plus an epilogue. So we've still got a ways to go. We're not even halfway there yet, but getting close. I hope that you're enjoying these readings. I'm having fun reading it to you. If you are liking it, again, please do give it a thumbs up so that my YouTube algorithm stuff, is improved and more people can find my videos. And if you like this story and you're enjoying these readings, please do share them with your friends and family who you think might also enjoy them. And again, please do subscribe if you haven't already, and ding that little bell so you receive notifications every time I upload new content, Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. Until next time, I hope that you are doing well. I'll talk to you soon.